Welcome to the lABLEd podcast, a show about disability, illness and difference.
And history.
I'm Lucy.
And I'm Alice.
I'm Daisy.
So much more than what you see. We all live our lives differently. Kaleidoscope identity. And this is who I'm meant to be. I'm just labelled me. I'm just labelled me.
In this episode, along with Lucy crying and Alice swearing, there's going to be a number of historical terms for disability that are now considered extremely offensive.
Hello everyone and welcome to the lABLEd podcast. We are in the middle of our first season. It's going very well so far, considering we haven't released it at the point of recording and we've only recorded 2 episodes, but I'm pleased. We haven't fallen completely down at the first hurdle. I am here with Lucy.
Hi. Hello.
I thought you weren't going to say hello then. I thought you were just going to sit there in silence.
I forgot where I was. I was like, oh yeah, there's a microphone in front of my face and a light on. Better say something.
And we also today have with us the wonderful Daisy Holder.
Yay.
Hi Daisy.
Hiya.
How are you?
I'm alright. My microphone has been having issues, but that does mean that I don't have to worry so much about drinking too loudly in a way that will come across in the recording.
Yes.
So
we won't hear
I'm going to enjoy this squash.
Well, and Lucy's just called my coffee bath water, so I've put off from finishing it. So for those of you who are horribly triggered by the sounds of people drinking, you'll be fine in this episode at least. As Daisy is here, that obviously means that we are doing a history lesson today. This is one that Lucy's been sitting on for what feels like 5 years.
I wrote it last year, middle of last year, and we're only just recording it. So let's hope I've not forgotten anything.
I mean, it's great for me because it's only about 50% of the work for me.
Yeah.
Okay, you do a lot of it, and then I'll just sort of chime in with some other stuff and can just sit back.
Daisy, the thing that made me laugh when I sent you my notes for you to look over and sort of see what I'd be talking about, you went, "Oh, great, polio! I like polio," which I was like, okay. Of all of the conditions that we talk about, polio is up there for Daisy, so I'm excited for this one.
What's not to like?
Yeah.
Please note, this is a joke. I don't like polio.
I was going to say, I don't know a great deal about polio, but I'm pretty sure people aren't like, woohoo, polio, most of the time.
Sitting there going, finally.
Yes! This is what I've been waiting for. So, as Alice said, I am doing I'm heading up the history lesson today, and today we're going to be talking about singer-songwriter Ian Dury, who had polio. So I'll be covering sort of his life and work, and also the condition of polio as well. So without further ado, Ian Dury was a British singer-songwriter who rose to fame in the late 1970s during the punk and new wave era of rock music. Now, I'm not quite sure what new wave is. They were talking about it on the radio the other day, and I was like, what is new wave, Mom? And she's like, I don't know. So I'm no further forward with that.
I feel like it's one of these things that you would probably know it if you heard it, but like I find genres generally quite difficult to explain.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, it's just that sort of vibe, and that means nothing. Like that's not helpful, is it?
No.
Like
I think it's like electronic sort of. I suppose this is exactly what you mean, Daisy. It has a very 70s, 80s kind of electronic kind of vibe.
Synth and stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but it's also just like, I think it's also just one of these things that's almost characterised by what it isn't as much as what it is.
It's not reggae.
No.
Yeah, like kind of like how like Britpop wasn't actually pop, it was just something different to the other stuff that was around.
It was different to take that, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, that was the slogan for Britpop.
We're doing take that
Different
alternative.
to take that.
Oasis, we're different to
Gary Barlow.
take that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he became very well known in the new wave and punk genre of rock music. He was most famous for being the frontman of Ian Dury and the Blockheads. So Dury was born in 1942 to parents William and Margaret and grew up in Middlesex. At the age of 7, Ian contracted polio, most likely, he believed, from a swimming pool at Southend-on-Sea during the 1949 polio epidemic. So this is where I hand over to the notes of Daisy, who went, I'll go on from here. So over to you, Daisy, to tell you a little bit more about polio.
Yeah, this is kind of like an earlier point than usual to sort of do my bit. Usually it's kind of a bit more halfway
Getting out
through.
of the way early so you can sit back and relax.
Yeah, realistically, it just didn't really make much sense to put it anywhere else. So, I mean, polio is one of these things that's kind of at risk of being lost a bit, like, knowledge-wise, because, like, from our perspective, it's kind of quite recent. You know, this was sort of, like I mean, I know people who, you know, had polio as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Have I told you the story about my mum and the girl that she went to school with who had polio?
No.
She was mean to my mum in the playground, so she pushed her over. Just
Classic kid.
Just like, fuck you, and pushed her over, and still talks about it to this day. Like,
Well,
she's
she's really proud of
it.
herself, yeah.
That is my limited exposure to polio, is that you want to be careful if you're around my mum.
Okay, I'll add that to my notes.
Yeah.
Polio is characterised by, you know, a virus, losing muscle tone and being pushed over by Alice's mum.
Why not? So yeah, how is polio characterised then, Daisy?
So it's kind of like see, I can find the actual specific dictionary definition, but primarily it's just a virus, which is kind of... Hang on, I've got to find the actual thing now to make sure I don't say it wrong. Because, there's a lot of things that call it a difference between, like, a virus and an infectious disease, and they seem to be very specific about how they say that. But, so, yeah, specifically, poliomyelitis is the disease, and poliovirus is the virus. So, basically, polio is caused by polio.
Right.
Right, okay.
So polio, the virus, is technically different from polio, the disease, which is as an effect of the virus.
Okay.
So I guess that polio, the virus, can exist without a bunch of people around it having polio. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this is what's kind of happened with the epidemics, is that they tended to be quite seasonal, as it were. So they would pop up during the summers, and then during the winters, like, you know, the virus would still be around, realistically. That's how it was able to pop up again in the summer. But, I mean, it's, you know, as with a lot of these kind of illnesses and diseases and viruses and things, it seems to have a much longer history than anyone really considers. So, I mean, there's paintings of ancient Egyptians with the kind of... They always call them withered. I don't like the term withered. It seems unpleasant, but that kind of muscle atrophy that's quite distinctive to poliomyelitis. It's kind of, you know, obviously this is my regular disclaimer that obviously you cannot diagnose people from history with anything because they're not directly in front of us.
No.
But
also, we are not doctors, so we probably shouldn't.
I mean,
anyone with anything.
Yeah, sure. I feel like that's implied. But yeah, like the Roman Emperor Claudius was thought to have had polio as a child.
Really?
And yeah, and it just seems that the way that these things are described and the way that they look are relatively distinctive. And so yeah, people seem much more confident kind of like diagnosing polio from the past than they do about a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Just because, yeah, I guess they just look a bit more distinctive.
Because I know Jeremy Beadle had it, didn't he, I think? Did he have polio?
Oh, really?
I think, because he
I've
had
got no idea. I'm not certain who Jeremy Beadle is.
Jeremy Beadle used to do You've Been Framed and Beadle's About and all that kind of thing. But I'm sure that he had one hand that was significantly smaller than the other. And I'm pretty sure that was to do with polio. But I could be wrong. I will have to go and research that before this episode comes out. But I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to Google it, but my microphone is balanced on the trackpad of my computer, so it's not letting me type anything.
But yeah, I can distinctly remember him being on telly when I was a kid and noticing he had one hand that was significantly smaller than the other, and me saying to a parent, "Oh, that man's hand, he's got a tiny hand," and Mum said, "Oh, it's because he has a thing called polio." So, but I could be misremembering.
I am almost certain that the three of us have had this exact conversation before, and that Daisy had to Google Jeremy Beadle and went, "Oh, I know who that is."
Yeah, I do now know who it is because I have Googled him.
There you go.
Again.
So.
But, okay, weirdly, Google says that his right hand is due to Poland syndrome.
Poland syndrome.
Poland syndrome.
Okay. Maybe I misheard.
A rare disorder that stunted growth in his right hand. It
Maybe
does sound a lot like polio. So
yeah. Is that somebody typing it wrong on Wikipedia? Like mishearing polio and going, "Oh, Poland syndrome."
No, I mean, I've clicked the link. It's taken me to a picture of someone's chest, so...
No. Well, it's a bit like my autocorrect on my phone constantly corrects cerebral palsy to cereal pudding. Like, that is my affliction. I have cereal pudding.
I'm quite like a cereal pudding.
Yeah.
Well, actually, a lot of people have cereal puddings, don't they? Cereal as like a late night snack.
Yeah, rice, crispy squares, that kind of thing. But yeah, so that was the first time I'd heard about polio, was obviously Jeremy Beadle and his tiny hand.
Unless it turns out that was inaccurate.
Anyway.
So, yeah. I know nothing.
Yeah,
Carry on, Daisy.
This is what I mean. It's one of these things that's kind of, to a lot of people, it's too recent a thing to really be taught about, as if it was like, this kind of disease that doesn't really exist anymore. Mm-hmm. But it is actually really recent. It's a bit like how, like, I was never taught in school or anything about, like, the breakup of the Soviet Union, because it was comparatively too recent to be taught in history lessons, but too long ago to be taught in, like, present day events.
Yeah. So, but we're probably jumping ahead, but there's a vaccine for polio now, right?
Yes.
Because it's not like, I mean, I was going to say it's not like chickenpox, but even these days, like, chickenpox is not like chickenpox was when me and Lucy were little, and like, it was just everybody got chickenpox when you were in primary school, and you were like, yeah, I had chickenpox. I get the impression that polio was a bit like, oh yeah, 4 of my cousins have polio, and like, just something that loads of people got, and you knew a bunch of people who had it.
I mean, yeah, that is the case. It's one of these diseases it's comparatively much less dangerous for children to get it than adults. Mm-hmm. So you're less likely to have long-lasting effects if you're a child than if you're an adult. However, that chance is still pretty high. So it was kind of, if you had polio, you probably wouldn't get it again, but it was a high enough risk that, unlike chickenpox, you wouldn't be actively going out of your way to try and get exposed to polio so that you would then be immune.
Not going out licking other children with polio, though.
Yeah. Like, I doubt they would have deliberately gone to the swimming pool to try and
catch polio.
Try and get polio.
Yeah.
But yeah, the earliest kind of recorded specific case is said to be Sir Walter Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I had to correct myself because I got mixed up with the Polar Explorer guy.
Yeah.
this is the Scottish writer who spent many years as a child and teenager trying to cure his, as they called it, lameness of his leg after he had this virus. And so, went to the spa waters in Bath and, to the countryside to convalesce and all of that type of thing that you would do in the 18th century to try and cure yourself. With, no real success.
As it turns out, a warm bath doesn't cure polio.
I know, who'd have thought it?
It's like how people were like, "Oh, what you really need is some fresh air to deal with your tuberculosis."
Yeah, but there are so many of these other, naturally big scary virus. No one knows how to stop it. We'll just try anything. So they tried electrotherapy, some really kind of invasive surgeries to kind of lengthen the tendons after, obviously the muscle wastage had already happened.
In the 19th century as well. That shit's rough.
Yeah, and lots of, supplements and medicines and things.
Did they use
Put
magnets?
some leeches on it.
Arguably. It's not quite the sort of animal magnetism type.
No.
Magnets,
Not kind of come and sit in a bath with me and let's see if we could cure this polio kind of thing. It's like
With my penis.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of baths and a lot of electricity. So this is kind of in a book in 1916, so we're talking a little bit later now, that they're saying, get in a bath, and then we'll electrocute the bath, and then we'll
bury you afterwards.
Rub some almonds on you.
Okay.
Get some mustard.
Are you sure you're not just preparing Sunday dinner there?
No, I find the wording in this particular section very concerning. Because they say internally use caffeine, quinine, elixir, radium water.
No.
Chloride of gold, wine of pepsin. And it's like, okay, I'm sure you mean make a concoction and drink it.
Yes.
But when they say...
sound like it's going up your arse.
Yeah. When they say internally use...
Yeah.
Either it's going up your ass or they're going to physically put their hand down your throat in order to, rub it in somewhere.
When you said, internally ingest or whatever the term was you used, I immediately thought an enema of some kind,
Yeah.
Just lie still while we insert this.
While we internally use this.
Yes, while
radium.
we internally use this, not nice.
What a weird choice of words.
It's very straight. Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of like a more medically book.
Yes.
So it could
You
just...
would expect them to use a phrase like, ingest, they're not internally used.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they wanted to leave the option open for, cutting open someone's stomach and just pouring it in there.
Pouring it in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when if you decide if you've got thrush and you need that treating, they're like, we can give you an oral tablet, but if you're a sadist, you can have this to put up your vagina instead.
Yeah.
Leave that option open.
Do they specifically say if you're a sadist? we have to keep this on the shelf because some people are into weird stuff.
So the treatment for polio sounds quite painful. I don't know if it was.
I was going to go with weird and ineffective.
Weird and ineffective, and also painful. Was the symptoms of polio, were they quite painful for the person who had caught it?
Yes, realistically. So these types of treatments would be happening at different times. So you would have the active, the active virus state, which would be a lot of the spasms and cramping of the muscles before the virus passed, and that was when you would kind of essentially find out what the after effects were, and
Kind of the permanent impact.
Yeah, and that would be when you started having particular limbs wither or get that muscle atrophy. And so some of these things like the warm baths and braces and holding things in place would be happening as the cramping was going on.
Yeah.
In the hope that the theory sort of went that the cramping itself caused the after effects rather than the virus caused both of them. And so you can sort of understand how, from their perspective, if you can stop the muscles cramping entirely, then maybe you will stop them being affected afterwards.
It's almost like them saying, we need to relax the muscles in its entirety so they don't do anything whilst...
So
just a misunderstanding of kind of that era science, isn't it? Like, they don't understand that the cramping is a symptom of what is happening to the muscles, not that the cramping is causing the issues.
Yeah, it's kind of... There are a lot of these treatments as well which kind of focused on the after effects, but they were still trying to kind of reverse what had already happened. Whereas it was a little bit later on that you started getting the type of treatment that was kind of accepting that there wasn't a massive amount you could do about the initial phase other than try and make it as comfortable as possible, and then working on the functioning afterwards. And that came from a sort of surprising source,
right?
Who I was telling you about yesterday in the text.
Okay.
So this is a bush nurse with questionable credentials.
I love this.
From the town of Nobby.
Oh, this is the Nobby nurse.
This is the Nobby nurse, yes. Nobby being a small town in Australia.
Yes. Not a nickname.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
She was called Elizabeth Kenny. She referred to herself as Sister Kenny.
Of course.
Throughout her life.
Mm-hmm.
She only had a couple of years of actual school.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she was a teenager, she broke her arm and was sent away to a doctor friend to recover, and became quite interested in, his science books and medical books and physiology and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
She got a license from the state to teach religion.
Okay.
And then she started telling people that she was a music teacher as well, and doing that on the side.
Okay.
And that's kind of where it starts.
I'm assuming this is early 1900s, where you could get away with that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. And that sort of period of time where you could just move 100 miles away and just be a different person and no one would ever know.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of. This is
and stuff.
Yeah, so I think hang on, I've got her date of birth up here somewhere if my computer decides to actually do things properly. You're right, this is kind of early 20th century. So yeah, she was born in 1880.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's that period of time where you could just be like, no, I'm supposed to be here. So and there's no way anyone can check anything.
Yeah.
What were Nurse Nobby's methods then? Was it kind of rub a dock leaf on that and see if that works? Have you tried a cup of tea?
I mean, primarily what she ended up doing was kind of maternity stuff and what would be kind of first aid. This was quite a remote town.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of thing that was really needed.
Right.
It's kind of a bush nurse is sort of a general phrase that people use, which is basically kind of a community person who will keep people going.
Yeah.
And determine whether they need to go to an actual big hospital doctor place or they can manage
right
where they were born.
Okay.
I mean, she had a number of other jobs after her teaching job, and including in a kitchen of a hospital.
Okay.
And then she used the money from those to get a tailor to make her a nurse's outfit, and
of
then went back to Nobby saying that she was a nurse.
I've got the outfit and everything.
And once again, no way to prove otherwise. Just
Can I see your certificates?
Yeah, I mean, she set up her own little cottage hospital at one point, they call it, which is basically kind of a rural.
She has a back room with a scrub table where she might cut your leg off if you need it.
Well, sort of first aid,
bandages,
things like that.
Yeah,
that's it's kind of I joke about it and talk it down, but it is a, legitimate thing that people need.
Yeah, of course.
So, fair play. But yeah, she did, when she set up this hospital, call herself a certified medical and surgical nurse, which would have been a problem for the Queensland Health Authority if they'd known about it.
Right.
Because, funnily enough, they were quite specific about who they wanted calling themselves a certified nurse. If she just called herself a nurse, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
Is it someone who has a certificate that has been given to them by, a healthcare training facility? Are those the people they want to be like, I am certified?
Yeah, and basically registered with the state as having been certified, and they know that their qualifications and things.
Their name is written down in a book somewhere.
I was going to say,
yeah.
It sort of feels like the clue is in the name with being a certified nurse.
Yeah, but I mean, funnily enough, from when I was looking at this is kind of actually relatively unusual. It's sort of, for a long time there wasn't any kind of, formalised training for nursing kind of anywhere in the world, really. I think it was saying that New Zealand was the first place to require specific training in order to be a nurse.
Well, nursing was for a really long time considered to be that kind of women's based community work. So it was midwifery, it was that emergency first aid, and so I suspect that there was a strong sort of helping of patriarchy that was like, well, why do we need to train women to do this?
Well, yeah, it was more specifically a caring role than a medical role. But yeah, that gradually began to change as more of this stuff was needed. She did work on a hospital ship during the First World War. It was a slightly shifty hospital ship, apparently, because it hadn't really asked too many questions about her lack of qualifications.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so, as far as I can tell, it was still a perfectly valid hospital ship, but it didn't have the official branding, which would mean that it was safe from attacks from either side.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So if it was painted white and had a red cross on it,
like
then everyone accepts that that's a hospital ship and nobody bothers it. This was
supposed to leave that alone.
Yeah. Whereas because this was a slightly shifty one, it was. I think it was just like a merchantcy vessel that was being used for hospital treatment, and so it was quite risky as well. But while she was there, she was given the title of sister, which isn't something that's used all that much anymore. But it was basically like one level lower than a matron.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do
pretty senior
on hospital wards.
Yeah. They'll be the type of people that will be in charge of stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she carried on using that for the rest of her life, which a lot of people were quite annoyed by.
Yeah, I get the sense that she thought, "Oh, this is a badge of honour. I'm going to keep using this now for the rest of my days," because she was obviously very proud of it. I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of debate about where she came up with this treatment method that she used for polio, because it seems that she told everybody a completely different story and no one could figure out which one was actually true.
Okay.
But it seems that she was asked to care for a girl who had polio,
right,
at a point where she wasn't able to work as a nurse anymore.
Okay.
It's because people had told her, you can't keep doing this anymore.
Realistically, probably.
Where are your certificates?
Yeah. And so she was doing, this kind of slightly more one-to-one care. But so she cared for this girl for 18 months, doing, hydrotherapy and things like that. The type of things that we would currently consider as, physiotherapy. And she recovered. She recovered a massive amount and was able to walk. Well, they wrote walk, marry, and conceive a child, and there's kind of one of those which is, I think, relevant to physiotherapy, and then there are two of them that are kind of I think she probably could have managed that anyway.
I mean, are they like 3 life goals that we should all be aiming for?
Yeah, your treatment has not succeeded unless you have managed to marry and conceive a child. Do I have to keep the child? That's irrelevant. You just have to be able to physically lie there as a child is conceived. Anyway, yeah, I don't know why I included that, but I guess I just found it amusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we got some traction out of it. So.
But yeah, so she she realised that this had seemed to work pretty well and carried on for a long time, and kind of gradually built it up into a way that it figured out it worked. So she was really, really opposed to what they had been doing at the time, which was completely immobilising kids with plastic casts or braces and things like that to try and stop the spasms happening. What she was doing was putting warm compresses on the muscles while they were spasming and hurting, and then afterwards doing what they called a careful regimen of passive, in inverted commas, exercises designed to recall function in unaffected neural pathways, which is basically just retraining
muscle memory, isn't it?
The brain with its muscle memory and movements and control of the muscles and things like that. It's classic physiotherapy, really.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the mainstream doctors thought her method, this was ridiculous, and she got into lots of public arguments with them. Just writing articles screaming at them for being idiots.
She's got her flaws, but I like a woman with a bit of spine. She seems like she's like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm running with it. Yeah,
she's great. I figured you would like her. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of seen by a lot of people as the origins of the modern style of physiotherapy. Because, there had been this kind of there had been physical therapy before this, but it had been very much focused on returning soldiers with missing limbs and, learning to walk with prosthetics and, get used to life without a hand and, be able to work again. And, working on these kind of long-term, neuromuscular conditions, strengthening exercises, things like that was pretty new.
And is that kind of still the treatment approach to polio now?
I mean, now the predominant treatment approach is give them a vaccine and they don't get it in the first place.
Well, yes.
But yeah, essentially. It's...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, good for her. Again, some questionable choices in her life, but no one's all good.
You can kind of see that her heart was in the right place, can't you? I suppose a little bit. When was the vaccination program in the UK? Do we know when that was rolled out and how? What was the tipping point of somebody going?
It was quite an early vaccine, wasn't it? Polio was one of the early kind of national campaigns on vaccination.
Yeah, it was comparatively early. See, most of the information I have is based on the US, just because that was where they did the original testing and things. Okay. But I mean, you can generally assume that things would follow in the UK a couple of years after they would happen in America, because I mean, really, this was more kind of an urgent thing in the US because that was where more of the epidemics were happening. So, with Ian, he contracted polio in, what was it, 49?
1949, yeah.
Yeah, and so the predominant time period of polio epidemics in the UK was between 1947 and 1950-ish.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
So yeah, it was right in that period, and it kind of peaked and troughed.
Swimming that summer, he'd probably got away with it.
I mean, I think there was still polio after that, but that was the peak time of the epidemics. Whereas in America, the first kind of report of an outbreak, whether you would call it an epidemic or not, because as it turns out, the word epidemic doesn't really mean much.
No,
it's entirely based on interpretation. It basically just means more cases appearing faster than normal. but it very much depends on what the normal is. But the first kind of outbreak, as it were, in the US was in 1841.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking about a good 100 years before.
And it took them that long for anybody to do anything about it.
Well, yeah, but in their defence, after that, it was another sort of, 50 years or so before there was another cluster that was seen as, like, noteworthy.
And did they did they start becoming more and more regular, these, like spikes in polio cases?
Yeah. So, there were, lots of epidemics of varying magnitude were popping up. Is saying by 1907 there were 2,500 cases just in New York City. Jesus. But in this time period that they were popping up and down, they were seasonal in that they were in the US every year, but often they would be in a different state, in a different
so they'd
city,
travel
and
around.
So and so it would be very easy from your particular town in America to be like, oh, this polio epidemic isn't a massive thing because it hasn't been in our town for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because it's just been in all of the other bits of America.
And probably in a lot of ways quite hard to track because it's such a huge continent. Getting that information at a time where there's not, you can't just ping someone an email is... that's going to impact how long it is before the government starts to go, someone needs to do something about this. Yeah,
exactly. And their initial ways of tracking epidemics were questionable. I feel like you will be outraged by what I'm about to say next. Because basically in 1916 in New York, they made like a big official announcement that there was an epidemic of polio in New York, so that everyone was aware. You got to be careful. So just in that year, there had been over 27,000 polio cases, and over 7,000 people had died. 2,000 of those people who died had been in New York, and so the way they decided to track this was. The names and addresses of individual people with polio were published in the newspaper every single day.
My God!
They put signs on their house like during the plague, and their entire household was quarantined.
And did they understand at this point that polio is not like a contagious infectious disease like that?
Like as far as from their perspective, then lots of people were together, and then all of those people had, polio. It's
because it's not like you said at the beginning. Obviously, it's not an infectious disease. You don't catch it from other people. You catch it from polio being out in the world.
Yeah, but you would theoretically be able to catch the polio virus from other people, but it wouldn't necessarily transfer into poliomyelitis.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, because if Ian Dury caught it from a swimming pool, and I think that in my notes, I think that is incredible that Ian Dury could go. I think I can remember when I caught it. It was at a swimming pool in 1949. Like that is quite something, isn't it? To go, I can sort of pinpoint what happened and when this started. Because I don't think I would. I don't think I would know.
I mean, I don't know enough about the incubation period and stuff, the symptom kind of mapping for something like polio. Like if he's saying that because he started getting pain when he was at the swimming pool, like then that wouldn't necessarily be accurate. I don't know. It's not like, I fell on a dirty spoon, so I know when I got tetanus.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that it would probably be more likely to be something like, this is the town that he spent time in. He knew that other people who were at that pool on that day also got polio. And realistically, that was...
together and made four.
His parents probably, would have talked to other parents of people who had, also had polio and come up with, the joint... I mean, like the COVID app that told us when we'd been exposed.
Yeah.
Just, you know, based on when you had been in the same place as other people who had it.
Well, it's like the whole track and trace thing, isn't it? There was people like ringing people up and going, were you in this pub at this time of day? Because, you know, 4 other people had coronavirus symptoms that you don't know. That kind of, you know, that's the thing that I thought of when you was talking about, you know, putting signs on the door and quarantining households. It's the similar sort of thing, isn't it, really? A very primitive version of it. But, yeah, I can't imagine how scary that would have been back having your name in the paper of, oh, they've got polio, stay away from them, you know.
Yeah. But, yeah, there was... Every year in the US there was an outbreak somewhere. And soon it was being reported in the UK as well. Like I was saying, in the UK as well there were some annual fluctuations, but between 1947 and 1950 was when
the big ones
that was kind of... Yeah, so it's, you know, I think a lot of people now consider that period of kind of 3 years as basically one outbreak.
Right.
Because of, you know, how it went up and down. But I mean, yeah, if he had ended up any worse, probably might have ended up in an iron lung.
Yeah.
You've probably seen these iron lungs. Big machine that you have to lie entirely inside with your head sticking out. And it forces air into your lungs through negative pressure. It's big, scary looking things. You see pictures of like wards,
like a sci-fi or like medieval kind of torture device almost, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like you see the pictures of, you know, wards full of just children lying in rows in these things. But it's possible to live in them for years and years and years.
I know. I think recently I saw some footage of a man. I think he was the oldest man to be living inside an iron lung, and he died like a few months ago, I think.
March 2024. He was called Paul Alexander, and he used it for 72 years.
I mean, unbelievable.
And in his younger years, when he had a bit more muscle strength, he was able to, you know, spend time outside of it as well. He managed to essentially like train his throat muscles into... He called it frog breathing.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Which is basically like he would force air down by kind of But he was a fascinating man, and he did so many interviews and things about his iron lung. I mean, in his older years, he was having to use it more and more, and I think he was living in it pretty much full time again in the last couple of years of his life. But I think he said he'd been offered, you know, alternative things to try when he was younger. Once he was older, that was no longer really an option because he'd been in the iron lung for so long. But he knew how that worked, and he wasn't interested in potentially, you know, risking his life to try something that might be a bit less invasive, because to him it wasn't that invasive.
No, I suppose he got used to it, didn't he? After a while, like you know, if it works, it works. But they do look very uncomfortable, you know, because you have
you'd have to have a lot of cushions inside.
Yeah, it just doesn't look the nicest thing to be encased
living
within.
in.
Living in
it, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. But don't worry, there was a solution.
Hurrah!
Why do I feel like that's in your notes? That's specific. You've actually written that down in notes.
I actually didn't. You just seemed so sad. Try and bring the tone up a bit. But yeah, because now I'm going to tell you about the vaccine.
Yeah!
Yay! Woo! Vaccines.
Yes, I feel like we have spoken about the polio vaccine before, so I won't go like too hard into detail about it. But basically, there were a number of ongoing research projects into trying to find a vaccine for polio, as you would imagine. You know, lots of different research groups trying different types of vaccines to find something that could work. For some reason, most of them involve crushing up the spinal cord of a monkey.
What?
Like they would give the monkey polio and then they would kill it and crush up its spinal cord. But like 3 different research projects were all like, and then of course they got the monkey's spinal cord. I'm like, but why?
Why?
that to me is more upsetting than children in iron lungs. I'll just put it out there. That's fucking hell. The shit we do to animals, man.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the processes was described by someone later as the therapeutic equivalent of bathtub gin.
Right.
Because it was just, let's put polio through a monkey loads and loads of times and then crush it up and then mix it with a load of other stuff and...
See if that works.
Yeah, question mark, profit?
I think, yeah, I was going to say, we think about scientists and pharmaceuticals as, you know, these super intelligent investigators, but there's definitely some people who are just throwing stuff against a wall to see what sticks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are at least 2 types of vaccine that got as far as being trialled in the wider community. In one of those cases, just no one mentioned that some of the safety trials were in children from the New York asylum.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In another case, it was widely publicised that the live vaccine was tested on an 8-year-old boy who was living at an institution for physically and mentally disabled young people.
Yeah, wonderful. Collateral damage.
Yeah, I mean,
we do some pretty horrible shit to animals, but we do some pretty horrible shit to people too.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, Jonas.
Congratulations, humanity.
Yeah, Jonas
Round of
Salk's
applause.
Jonas Salk's vaccine, which is the one that we're most familiar with and used. That was an inactivated polio virus, which you inject into people in order to increase their antibodies. Much the same as a lot of vaccines now.
Am I right in thinking that they used to use sugar cubes for polio vaccine? They'd put it on the sugar cube and then let you eat the sugar cube,
like a horse.
Yeah. So that was a slightly different type of vaccine than this one. So that's the kind of vaccine which was still used for a really, really long time in developing countries. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an oral vaccine because it didn't need to be like refrigerated or anything like that.
Yeah.
But obviously because it was an oral vaccine, it tasted really horrid, and so you had to put something in there to make it taste a bit better.
Nicer.
Interestingly, that one was also technically a live vaccine, in that it was a much weakened version of the virus, so it was more stable for like travelling. But there were a few very rare cases of polio from the vaccine. But it tended to be like a very mild version. Mm-hmm. And that one's not used so much anymore.
No.
Now, partly because of that, but also partly just because we all did such a jolly excellent job of
vaccinating
getting rid of a lot of polio. But yes, Salk's vaccine, he first tested it on himself to make sure it was safe.
That I'm here for. That I am here for.
So a lot of the stories that I have read say, he tested it on himself and then he tested it on his own children. And I mean, he did, but before that, he tested it on
other people's children.
Yeah. He tested it on disabled children from group schools and then some local elementary schools. Mm-hmm. So it might be worth noting here that this isn't like just prejudice against disabled children. Like there's a bit of that, but a lot of these kids were living in like group home situations, and so they were at high risk of being exposed to polio. And so, you know, from a kind of safety perspective of seeing whether
it worked,
it was safe for people, and also as to whether it was going to be effective for preventing polio. Like,
it's a very good trial situation, isn't it? Except
you're
in that situation. Yeah.
Yes, and when they tested it on the kind of local elementary school kids, there were sort of 2 schools that were relatively close together in the same smallish town, and they gave it to half of them and then not to the other half to see how effective it was. I mean, it was widely publicised that he refused to patent his vaccine because it was for everyone. Interestingly, something I did read while I was doing this was that the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis and the university looked into patenting the vaccine. But they said that his techniques were not novel. And any patentable thing would be within it, like, a very narrow scope and probably wouldn't be of much value, in that just his system was, like, replicable. Like, it would be very easy for someone else to do the same thing, and there's nothing new about it which you can patent, really. It's just a method that we already know about used for something else. Yeah.
But that story's not as interesting as he didn't want to patent the vaccine. He wanted everyone in the world to have free access to it.
I mean, like, that's probably still true. Like, he probably still went, I'm not even going to try. But also, they wouldn't have, even if he had asked. But he probably just didn't ask because he wasn't interested. It was, someone else who asked. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, thanks to the two main vaccines, so both the Salks one and the oral one with the sugar cube that we were talking about, there were only 33 reported cases of polio in the year 2018. I mean, down from... Globally.
Wow.
Down from 350,000 in 1988, which even then that was, like, nowhere near the peak.
No.
But we're at the point now where there is really only existing polio in 2 countries.
Right. That, I mean, that is
there was a brief period, a couple of years ago probably like 10 years ago, where some people seemed to get a bit complacent, and there was a bit of a comeback in, a few countries like China. But now we're back again, and I believe it's Afghanistan and... Pakistan and Afghanistan.
I mean, that's not bad going at all, is it, really, to be fair?
It's pretty solid, yeah.
I would call that. It's almost a shame that you have done your bit so early on, Daisy, because that would be an awesome high note to end on. And I don't know anything about Ian Dury, but, I mean, if this history lesson goes like any of my history lessons, it's going to be really downhill from here.
Thanks, Alice. Cheers.
Not because of you, because
would you like a spade? Just dig that hole a little bit deeper. It's fine. Don't worry, it's fine. I think that is extremely successful.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And it just goes to show you that vaccinations do work, doesn't it?
But
there you go.
Good job, universe.
Bad
job, universe, for creating polio.
I don't think the lABLEd podcast has anything personally against
polo mints,
polo.
No. Or polo mints.
I don't know. It depends what you think about the polo's impact on the horses.
The horses aren't having a great time, to be fair.
I'll text my equestrian friends and see if they know anything about.
I mean, I don't think it's quite. It's not quite horse racing bad, but I don't think they're having the best time.
No. So shall we go back to Ian Dury and have a little bit of chat about Ian and his career?
Sure. I'll come back to you about the polo.
Okay.
I was going to say, I can sit here and talk about animal abuse more if you like, but I don't feel like that's what people are here for.
No. It's a show about disability, illness and difference, not disability, illness and GGs. At the time of Ian's diagnosis, there was no prevention, and if it was caught, it affected lung muscles or the brain, and it could be fatal. Though the condition left Ian with paralysis and a withering of his left leg, shoulder, and arm, he went on to have a very successful career. He was put in full plaster cast for 6 weeks. at Black Notley Hospital, where he spent a year and a half before going to Chailey Heritage Craft School in 1951. It was at Chailey Ian became an observant and determined young man, which sounds like a school report, doesn't it, really? And alongside other disabled students.
Ian is doing very well in maths. He is an
observant,
determined young man.
And alongside other disabled students, learned, amongst other things, cobbling and printing. All of the valuable...
Was he going to school in the 1820s?
All of the valuable life skills there.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to do printing.
Well, yeah,
I go to a craft school.
There's a little print button in the top right-hand corner of your screen. That's how you do printing.
Did I ever tell you about the time I was in my sixth form at my special school that I attended? And in the sixth form, they said, "Oh, we're going out into town today." I was like, "Oh, great, where are we going?" The pub. We're like, going out for lunch somewhere? And they were like, "No, we're going to take photographs of you using a pedestrian crossing."
I told the story.
And I was like, "What?" What? So every time I push a button on a pedestrian crossing, I was like, "I've got a certificate. It's fine. I can do this safely and efficiently to get across the road." It sounds a lot like what Ian was doing with the cobbling and the painting. Where were we?
Everyone always needs shoes.
Yeah, you always need shoes. His mother, however, wanted him to be more academic, and he was moved to the Royal Grammar School in High Wycombe, where he recounted being punished for his misdemeanours by being made to learn long tracts of poetry until his housemaster found him sobbing and put a stop to it. So basically, like, he was a bit naughty, and he was getting into trouble a lot, and he, it's either one way or the other, isn't it? I bet he was wishing he could go back to his cobbling lessons then. Like, it's fine, I'll make you some shoes. In 1971, Dury had developed a passion for music, and he formed the Kilburn and the High Roads, who toured with The Who, signed with Warner Music in 1974, and recorded an album under the label Madness. Under a label, Madness, the band Madness. Also credits them as being an influence on their sound. Many people joined and left Kilburn and the High Roads, and the members of the band eventually formed Ian Dury and the Blockheads, who very quickly gained a reputation as one of the top new wave acts in the UK. The band built up a dedicated following in the UK and other countries and scored several hit singles, including What a Waste, Reasons to be Cheerful Part 3 and Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, which got stuck in my head because I was listening to Ian Dury's back catalogue, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know this one."
The only one I would recognise. Yeah,
you probably would. You would probably, if you heard "Reasons to Be Cheerful" Part 3, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard this," but you probably wouldn't necessarily think it was Ian Dury and the Blockheads. So, "Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick" sold just short of 1 million copies, and Ian's ear for lyrics, lyrical poetry, and wordplay against observations of working class life have left a huge impact on British culture today.
That'll be all that poetry was forced to learn, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. In the opening ceremony, I think it may have been the Olympics, it may have been the Paralympics opening ceremony. I think it might have been the Paralympics opening ceremony. They had a performance that had a lot of...
When are we talking?
2012. Hour.
Oh, the recent one. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking like back in the 80s.
No, they did a performance. I don't know what group it was, but they did a performance of Reasons to Be Cheerful, and it just made me think disabled people are badass. Do you know what I mean? It was like, well done everybody. I really did like that. I've got it in my notes that I can share as like part of the to go alongside the notes at the end of this episode, so you can all watch that. In 1981, Ian wrote a song written to show his disdain for that year's International Year of Disabled Persons, which he saw as patronising and counterproductive. It was banned by the BBC.
No way!
Yeah, for its uncompromising lyrics, which were, "So place your hard-earned peanuts in my tin and thank the Creator that you're not in the state I'm in. So long I have languished on the shelf, I must give all proceedings to myself." Yeah, people didn't like that. The song's refrain from "I'm Spasticus Autisticus" was inspired by the response to the rebellious Roman gladiators in the film Spartacus, who, instructed to identify their leader, all answered, "I'm Spartacus." The song was deliberately provocative, as the word spastic is a name for people used with cerebral palsy, and was then the title for the Spastic Society, now called Scope. So, yeah, he was very outspoken, was Ian. But when you hear that song, I actually researched that song and I was like, this is quite good, I like this.
What did you say it was called?
Spasticus Autisticus, that's what it's called.
Okay.
That's what it's called. In 2012, the song was performed live on television and broadcast worldwide during the opening ceremony of the 2012 Paralympics by orbital members of the Grey Eye Theatre Company. Dury was diagnosed with rectal cancer in 1996 and underwent surgery, but tumours were later found in his liver, and he was told that his condition was terminal. He died on the 27th of March 2000, aged 56, in tribute to the lead singer of Magnus Suggs said Ian was possibly the finest lyricist we've ever seen. He was cremated after a humanist funeral with 250 mourners at the service, including Suggs, Jules Holland and Mo Molan. So, you know.
I was going to say, it sounds like he was very respected by other musicians, which I think is always a mark of, like, sometimes people are very popular with the public, but I do think musicians tend to look for people with you know, a lyrical edge and a sort of a depth that you don't necessarily like. The public will like a catchy tune, and I feel like I always think that that's quite a mark of somebody who's puts a lot of themselves into their music.
And I think what I liked about Ian was the fact that his disability didn't really seem to be an issue unless he made it like the thing that people were talking about. Do you know what I mean? It was on his terms. He reclaimed the word spastic, which, I mean, isn't really used that much today. But I think in the disability community, some people have reclaimed that word for themselves. And I think that was a very early incarnation of him going, well, no, I'm going to take this, you know, what would be considered a slur and turn it into something to be... to sit up and take notice of. And I think that's I think he's the first person back in sort of like the 80s where you see that happening. I mean, I still cannot get over the fact to this day that Scope was once called the Spastic Society. I just think it blows my mind that somebody went, let's use that.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was set up to start with by people who do not live with, you know, those sorts of disabilities.
Set
up
on our behalf, maybe.
Want to do good work.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, it never has been her, you know, disabled people's organisation, really, has it?
No. But
it's not an organisation I've had a lot of contact with because of the nature of my disability, and so it's not something I know.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, you're not one of their people.
I mean, you could.
They don't want to help me.
You could argue that I'm one of their people, and I've not had a lot of dealings with them really. But yeah, I think Ian is the first person that I certainly know of back in that sort of 80s period that goes, okay, this is what I am. What are you going to do about it? Let me tell you what it's about. And, you know, I don't think he was ashamed of it.
Yeah, it's really nice that all of those sort of contemporaries in music and different, you know, other places have just sort of they haven't
for his talent.
They just sort of haven't even mentioned it really as being part of him.
Kind of a nice thing, I think, for anybody. Like, I think for me, I think it would be very difficult to talk about me when I'm not here anymore and not mention the disability thing because of the work I do in my day job, and also I've got a podcast about disability. I've made it my thing.
Yeah. Like I really kind of hate that sort of attitude of like, oh, they didn't let their disability define them, anything like, nah, piss off. Like, it's...
I talk about what I know, babes.
Exactly.
I was like, yeah, maybe I'll stop talking about it when it stops being the first thing that anybody ever mentions when they meet me for the first time.
I always think of it as like I work in the disability industry, so like I'm essentially making money off my experience of being a disabled person.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys aren't gonna open doors for me so that I can make money in other ways, then I'm gonna fucking do it this way.
Yeah, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, why is it a success if I get through my life and no one knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I went through a bit of a period of time where it was a bit of like internalized ableism, where I was like, am I a boring person because I have a job that is to do with disability? I have a disability. I have a disability podcast. Like, there is other things to me than my disability, but I do seem to pop on about it a lot. Do you know what I mean?
I very actively in my master's degree was like, I'm interested in disability representation, but that's not what I'm actually want to talk about, because I don't want people to be like, oh, it's another disabled person talking about disability. And then I got to start in my PhD and I was like, yeah, no, let's just do this. Let's just see this for what this is.
I know a bunch of people who said that, like, if they went back in time and talked to like themselves when they were a teenager, like their teenage selves would be like outraged that their career was about their disability or about disability in general.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas I think if I could go, the thing that I would do if I could go back in time would be at the age of about 12, when I stopped being able to swim in the like local authority pool on a Saturday morning with 47,000 other children because it was inner city London. I would go back and be like, you need to find yourself para swimmers. Like, that's what you need to be doing. You need to be finding yourself blind because you love this. Don't decide to stop doing it because it's too hard and it's stressful, but you don't want to be like, go into a swimming pool with a bunch of wheelchair users. That's not, why is that the thing that's stopping you do the thing you enjoy?
Yeah.
But that's internalized ableism. But
I on the days where my internalized ableism is rife, I kind of go, do I bore people with this? And then I think, well, no, you don't bore people with it, Lucy, because this is your life, and as much as you love your life, it's bloody hard work sometimes. You need people to understand. You need people to understand it. And
you can bet your ass that Taylor Swift doesn't worry if she's boring because she's written another song about another boyfriend and that all she thinks about are her boyfriends and her ex-boyfriends. That is not what Taylor Swift is worrying about. Why are you worrying about
Am I like the disabled Taylor Swift? Is that what you're telling me, Alice? Is that what you're telling me?
One can but dream.
Okay. All right, I'll take that. So yes, that is Ian Dury. I think a very fascinating man. I like his attitude, but I think that's his punk new wave way, isn't it? I think
it does feel a bit punk. That Spasticus Autisticus song does feel quite punk and quite like, fuck you, I'm putting my fingers up to all of this. Mm-hmm.
Like, don't pity me, kind of piss on pity thing, isn't it? No, I enjoyed learning about Ian Dury. Thank you for your help with the polio stuff. Daisy, you saved my bacon there, because
Quite
the bit I'd written, you'd have been like, whoa, hang on, where did you get that from? So thank you for your expertise there.
That's quite all right. He's one of these people that I know a surprisingly little amount.
Yeah, me too.
Considering it was sort of, relatively recent, and it seems to encapsulate a lot of my interests.
Yeah, exactly. But I hope you enjoyed that, Alice.
I did, yeah, it was interesting. Nice to do another history lesson.
Yes, always fun.
And I know that they are always a fan favourite for the listeners. If you guys would like a little bit more Daisy, this week's bonus content is a bit exciting. Daisy has been working on another project of their own in the background and will be coming on to tell us all about it with a bit more information. But at the moment, I think we're keeping it a secret, even though this isn't going out for 6 months.
I mean, I guess I'm not. Otherwise, like, no one will do anything. Otherwise, nothing will happen.
Well, then head over to sign up to our newsletter and head over to there to get the bonus content for Daisy's big reveal. And we'll do that over there.
Are we calling it Project Shush?
No, I mean, I guess I have to actually tell people about it. Otherwise, this is a waste of time.
We could call it Project Shush if you wanted to, and then that could be the title of the newsletter.
It makes more sense if I actually say it in this thing. Otherwise, it's
are you gonna say
hiding it from people who aren't necessarily going to listen to the bonus content.
Okay.
Do we need to add get Adam to add in a little drum roll or something?
Yeah.
And trumpets and stuff.
Oh yeah, like when someone is welcomed into the royal court.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do 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 do. My trumpet noise.
It's a book.
A book, ladies and gentlemen. Yay!
I did a book.
Daisy,
hopefully you can buy.
We are so proud of you. When you were telling us about this book, like, I think you told us about this book when we were at the Richard III recording, and we were like, wow, that's really exciting. And then sort of like...
And that was so long ago.
That's so long ago.
It takes to write a book.
It was so long ago. It took ages to write it. So many words. I was so worried that I wasn't going to fill the space, and then I went over by a very large amount. Anyway, it's going to be called Queer Disability Through History. So it's a combination of queer history and disability history.
Exciting.
Fabulous stuff.
And you'll come on the bonus content and maybe tell us a little bit about some of the people that you're covering in your book.
Yes.
Great.
Awesome.
Can't
I will
wait.
force you to put a link to it or something in the episode description.
Yeah. Waterstone.
Of this and
everywhere.
that. I will come to your house and make you put the link in.
I mean, Lucy's quite a big fan of yours. I really think you only need to. You don't even have to ask nicely. I think Lucy can just do it.
I did somewhat embarrass myself, didn't I, on the 100th episode with the with how much I love working with Daisy.
Why is that embarrassing? Like,
well, it's just because.
Why would it be so embarrassing to enjoy spending time with me?
It was embarrassing.
That's just a real insult.
It sounded like I was actually living outside your house in the bin, going, "Daisy's coming, quick, hide."
You could do that if you wanted. We've got a bin shed here, so you
shed
have coverage.
Yeah.
Protected from the rain.
But yes, so that will be our bonus content for this episode. Make sure you are subscribed to our newsletter, and it will appear in your inbox alongside this episode as well. So that's something for you to look forward to. We're actually putting some proper thought into the bonus content for these episodes now that we are serial rather than just on a constant hamster wheel of producing episodes. So we're working really hard to make sure that we cram as much content at you as we can possibly create. So make sure you go and sign up to our newsletter. Daisy, thank you so much.
And then buy my book.
And buy Daisy's book. Daisy, thank you so much for joining us today and for all your help, as ever, to make these history lessons so much fun. It's always great to sit and have a chat with you about polio and all sorts of other things. So thanks for joining us.
It's always a lovely time.
Oh.
Thank you everyone for listening. You know the drill. Follow us on all the socials at lABLEd, and head over to our Facebook community and say hello to Carly, who is awesome and hanging out over there. And we will see you next week for some more disability stuff.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Shh. Don't wake Dora. Thanks for listening to the lABLEd podcast. If you like the show, you can rate, review and subscribe, and you can follow us on social media at lABLEdPod.
This episode was edited by Adam Hall. Our music was by Maisie Crunden, and we'd like to thank the rest of the team involved.